Marina stood by her son's crib in a tiny rented room, barely holding back tears. After her husband's sudden death, she was left alone with 5-year-old Tommy and a mountain of debt. Outside, a light autumn rain drizzled. The room smelled of damp walls and cheap tea. Her heart pounded with anxiety. Tomorrow was the rent deadline, and she had almost no money left. Marina gently stroked the back of her peacefully sleeping son, silently praying for a miracle. And then it seemed like one appeared. Earlier that day, she had read a newspaper ad for a live-in caregiver position with an elderly wealthy woman. The pay was generous, with room and board included. An opportunity like that couldn't be missed. I can do this. For my son, I can get through anything, she repeated to herself as she drifted into an uneasy sleep. The night was restless. Marina dreamed of hospital corridors and doctors murmuring about an unknown illness. When she woke early the next morning, she was determined to get the job no matter what. By late afternoon, holding Tommy's hand tightly, Marina stepped through the gates of an old estate surrounded by wrought iron fencing. They had traveled for hours on city buses to reach this quiet, affluent property. Fear and hope churned inside her. Would the woman let her stay? Would she allow her to keep Tommy with her? At the door, they were greeted by a kind-faced housekeeper named Grace, who soon led Marina and the boy into the bedroom of the estate's owner. On the large bed, under a blanket, lay a thin woman in her 70s, pale with sharp eyes. Victoria Henderson was frail, but she welcomed her guest warmly. Marina sat nervously at the bedside, her knees trembling. The room smelled of lavender and medicine, and an antique clock ticked in the corner. "So, you're Marina, my new caregiver?" the old woman asked quietly. Her voice was weak but steady. "Yes, Mrs. Henderson," Marina replied, eyes downcast. "I have experience caring for the sick. I desperately need this job, and I'll do everything I can to earn your trust." Tommy stood nearby, clutching his teddy bear. Victoria Henderson noticed him and gave a faint smile. "And who's this little one? Your son?" Marina flinched slightly. "I'm sorry I brought him with me. I have no one to leave him with." The old woman raised her hand slightly. "It's all right. Let him stay, as long as he's not a troublemaker. Honestly, it might be nice. This house hasn't heard a child's laughter in ages." Marina felt a weight lift off her chest. She smiled warmly. The old woman wasn't nearly as stern as she had imagined. They chatted a little longer. Marina gave a brief account of her life, her son, and her desperate need for work. Victoria listened carefully. By the end of the conversation, she nodded. "All right, we'll give it a try. Let's see how you manage. The rules are simple. You'll live here, help me with whatever I need. I'll pay you well. You won't be mistreated." Marina thanked her, barely holding back tears of relief. This was the beginning of a new life in Victoria Henderson's home. The first day went smoothly. Grace showed Marina a cozy room on the first floor where she and Tommy could stay. By evening, exhaustion had set in, but for the first time in a long while, her heart felt hopeful. She had a roof over her head and a job. Maybe things would finally get better. The next morning, Marina began her duties. She gently fed Victoria a light breakfast and helped her with hygiene. The old woman was very weak, lying with her eyes closed most of the time. Marina noticed she had almost no appetite. She only ate a few spoonfuls of porridge before turning the rest away. Later, the family doctor arrived, a reserved man in his 40s named Dr. Harrison. He gave Victoria a quick exam and checked her blood pressure. Marina kept a notepad ready to jot down his instructions. The doctor spoke in a monotone. "Heart drops in the morning. These 2 sedatives in the afternoon. Sleeping powder at night. Got it?" Marina nodded, taking notes and trying to memorize everything. She was a little surprised by the number of sedatives and sleep aids prescribed. Victoria winced slightly at the mention of pills but said nothing. When the doctor left, she whispered, "I'm tired of these bitter potions. But what can you do? I have to take them. Marina gently patted her cool hand. Maybe the doctor will lower the doses once you start feeling better. Victoria didn't respond. She just closed her eyes, signaling she wanted to rest. The old woman slept most of the day. Marina stayed by her side, occasionally glancing over at Tommy, who played quietly on the rug with a toy car. Doubts began to creep in. Was Victoria really being treated correctly? Why was she so lifeless? But Marina didn't have the authority, or the courage, to question the doctor. Near evening, Victoria briefly woke, ate a few spoonfuls of broth, and took her evening powder dissolved in water. Almost immediately, she drifted into a heavy sleep. Her breathing grew deep and irregular, her face pale. Marina adjusted the blanket and noticed all the pill bottles and medication boxes on the nightstand. Some of the names she recognized, strong sedatives. A sense of unease stirred inside her. Wasn't it too much for such a fragile body? That night, Marina stayed alert at Victoria's bedside. Around midnight, she noticed the old woman's breathing become erratic and shallow. Victoria groaned in her sleep, her face glistening with sweat. Suddenly her body jerked, hands twitching as if she were having a small seizure. Marina leaned over in panic. "Mrs. Henderson, are you okay?" The old woman didn't wake, only murmured faintly in her sleep. "No more pills. Enough." A chill ran down Marina's spine. She checked her pulse, still there, but faint. Her heart raced in fear. What should she do? Call the doctor? But what if he didn't arrive in time? Remembering Victoria's murmured words, Marina grabbed the powder packet from the nightstand and scanned the instructions. Sure enough, the side effects of an overdose matched what she saw. The doses might be too strong. Taking a risk, she decided not to give any more medication that night. If anyone asked, she'd say she had followed instructions. But instead, she brewed a calming herbal tea with mint and gave it to Victoria in small spoonfuls whenever she stirred. The old woman drank a little and settled down. Her breathing stabilized. The rest of the night passed without incident, though Marina didn't sleep at all, listening to every breath. The next morning, Marina couldn't believe her eyes. Victoria looked slightly better. Her face had a bit of color, and her eyes were clearer. She quietly asked for tea and even ate a small piece of toast. For someone who hadn't eaten in days, it was progress. Marina fought back a smile as she served her breakfast. She was sure cutting the sleeping powder had helped. Her quiet decision had made a difference. The old woman was more alert and even asked Tommy what he had dreamed about. Marina's eyes welled up with tears. Maybe, just maybe, she had done the right thing. But the joy didn't last long. Around noon, an unexpected visitor arrived, one of Victoria Henderson's few remaining relatives. His name was Christopher Mitchell. He was a well-dressed man in his 40s, with a commanding presence and a cold, unreadable gaze. When she heard he was coming, the old woman nervously bit her lip. Marina felt Victoria Henderson weakly squeeze her hand. "Stay with me," she whispered. Christopher stormed up the stairs and walked into the bedroom without knocking. He barely nodded at his aunt, then turned to Marina with icy politeness. "So you're the new caregiver? I hope you're doing your job and not sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Leave us. I need to speak to my aunt alone." Marina saw Victoria's eyes widen in fear. "Sorry, but the doctor instructed me to stay with the patient at all times," she replied gently, not moving. Christopher's face darkened. "I'm family. This won't take long. I said leave." "Let Marina stay," Victoria suddenly said quietly. "I trust her." Christopher let out a frustrated sigh but didn't argue. He shot Marina a hateful look. That stare sent a chill through her, but she stood her ground. Christopher sat down next to his aunt. "So, how are you? Looks like you're fond of your new nurse, won't even let her leave the room," he said with a venomous smile. Victoria looked away. "Say what you came to say." Christopher rubbed his fingers together, gathering his thoughts, then pulled out several sheets of paper from a folder. I brought the updated documents. The notary fixed the will, just like we discussed. The house, the business, and all assets go to me. The old version was a joke. We're leaving a small fund for your granddaughter's education, since you insisted. Just sign it, and we're done here. Marina stiffened but stayed quiet. So it was about the inheritance. The old woman shook her head. No, Christopher. I've changed my mind. I can't cut my granddaughter out like that, she's my blood. I'm leaving everything to Olivia. Please don't be angry. You two can work it out later. Christopher's face twisted with rage. What? He snapped, half standing. You changed your mind? We had an agreement. You had an agreement, Victoria said, more firmly now, even raising her hand. All your threats won't silence my conscience. I won't disinherit my granddaughter. Christopher's face turned red. His hands clenched the papers. So that's it? You suddenly have a conscience, he hissed. Where was that conscience when my father bailed out you and your husband's business, drowning in debt? He helped you all, gave everything he had, while you and Grandpa lived in luxury. The old woman began to cough from the stress. Marina quickly offered her a glass of water and shot Christopher a warning look. Please, don't upset her. These conversations are bad for her health. Shut up. This isn't your business, he snapped, waving her off like a fly. He leaned closer to Victoria, his voice a low growl. You're going to sign those papers. Otherwise, you'll regret it. And it'll cost you. Victoria turned pale but shook her head. No. Don't ask again. Christopher lost it. He crumpled the will and threw it on the floor. Damn you and your stubbornness, he roared. You think you'll last much longer? If it weren't for me, he stopped mid-sentence, catching Marina watching him. She covered her mouth in horror, then spoke firmly. I'll call the police right now if you don't leave. The police? Christopher sneered. And what will you tell them? That a family member came to visit? They won't even show up. And you'll be out on the street before you know it. He stepped toward Marina, menace in his eyes. She froze inside but didn't back down. Just then, an elderly man appeared at the doorway. It was the notary, carrying a folder. He must have come on his own after hearing the shouting. Excuse me, is everything all right in here? He asked, sensing something was wrong. Christopher spun around. Everything's just fine. Now get out. This doesn't concern you. The notary took a step back. Christopher turned to his aunt again, his voice suddenly cold and terrifying. If you won't do this the easy way, we'll do it the hard way. Once you're dead, no one will question it. He grabbed a medicine bottle from the table, clearly planning to force the entire dose into Victoria. Don't you dare! Marina screamed, lunging forward and grabbing his arm with both hands. The bottle slipped and rolled across the floor, its contents spilling. Christopher shouted and shoved Marina aside, raising his hand to strike her. His palm slammed into her face. She cried out and collapsed to her knees. Her ears rang, and her mouth filled with the taste of blood. He'd split her lip. Victoria screamed. Help! Somebody help! Christopher rushed to the nightstand, yanked open the drawer, and pulled out a syringe, clearly prepared in advance. Dizzy from the blow, Marina forced herself up and threw herself in his way. No! I won't let you! He shoved her again, but just then, people burst into the room. The notary had brought a security guard. Seeing them, Christopher froze. In his hand was the syringe, clear evidence. The guard stepped forward. Put that down. Step away, or I will use force. Christopher realized he'd lost. His face twitched, and he dropped the syringe. Fine. Take it. Nobody's going to believe you anyway. I didn't do anything, he stammered, putting on a fake look of concern. "I was just trying to help, give her a pain shot." She misunderstood. "Enough with the lies." Victoria Henderson suddenly shouted, her voice stronger than anyone expected. She struggled to prop herself up on one elbow, her eyes blazing with anger and pain. "Everyone here heard you threaten me." The notary nodded solemnly. "Yes, I'm a witness. This won't be swept under the rug." Christopher made a run for the door, but the security guard grabbed him by the arm. "Easy there, sir. You're staying put until the police arrive." Realizing there was no way out, Christopher sank into a chair and buried his head in his hands. He looked like the fight had gone out of him, older, defeated. Marina could barely believe it was over. Just one moment more, and something terrible might have happened. But now the danger was gone. She was still shaking, her lips still stung, and she could taste the blood in her mouth. The police arrived quickly, the notary had called them. Christopher was led out in handcuffs, mumbling something about a misunderstanding. Once the chaos died down, Marina finally let herself collapse into the chair beside Victoria's bed. Her hands were trembling, emotions flooding over her. The old woman gently reached out and touched her bruised cheek. "My dear girl, you saved me," she whispered, a single tear rolling down her face. Marina took her hand and pressed it to her cheek. "We saved each other. I couldn't have done anything else." With great effort, Victoria said, "I knew I was right about you." "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll make sure you're well rewarded." Just then, Tommy peeked into the room, woken by all the noise. When he saw his mother, he burst into frightened tears. Marina immediately pulled him into her arms, gently stroking his hair. "It's okay now, baby. It's all over." Seeing the moment between mother and son, Victoria began to cry too, but this time with relief. She motioned for them to come closer. They stepped to her bedside, and she rested her trembling hand on Tommy's head. "The world needs people like you, kind and brave. Thank you." Marina felt tears fill her eyes. She knew she'd never forget this moment. A life saved, justice served, and a new family found through hardship. Victoria Henderson began to recover. The evil was behind them, and brighter days lay ahead. Because kindness, compassion, and courage can truly work miracles.